Hello.
Hey, everybody.
We're both wearing our glasses today.
Yes,
We
I
thought
can
we'd
see
be
myself.
studious.
I'm usually blind, but
Uh,
yeah,
Why did we freeze?
I don't know.
Oh, there we go. We froze.
We're back.
Gotta love technology.
Yep.
Frozen in time.
Yeah.
I guess it means we're not aging anymore.
That's
We're
okay.
gonna stay just
My
like
brain,
this
my
for
brain
you.
does the same thing. So it just freezes. And
It's
I'm
on.
like,
It's on our
"What
wavelength
was
today.
I doing?"
We're used to
Okay.
freezing. We're used
That's
to
right.
freezing.
Yeah, especially recently. Speaking of
Oh my
what we're
gosh!
talking about
I
today.
know. My goodness.
So today we
Mm.
are discussing the
Hmm.
wonderful world of hormones and HRT and supplements and hysterectomies and ablations.
And ablations and all sorts of
And
very
all
sexy,
kinds of
exciting women health
things
things.
exactly that women have to go through sometimes during this life phase. So
Uh-huh.
yeah, we're going to cover some bases here and just talk about it because it's sort of one of the main reasons that we started Worth.
Mhm.
It was, we're both going through menopause and we were like, it'd
Mhm.
be kind of cool to have like a platform to discuss all of this.
Yes,
Because
absolutely.
it sometimes is a bit of a taboo subject.
Mhm.
Some people don't like talking about it. Some
Well, and
people
there's
are
so many misnomers too. I mean, there's just
correct.
I feel like we just keep continuing to forge ahead and finding, you know, new information,
Hmm.
new advancements,
Yep.
new symptoms
Yeah. Well,
of
and everybody's
menopause,
symptoms are
and
different.
everyone's different. Yeah, everyone's
And
different.
it's yeah. I mean, you've met one woman with menopause. You've met, that's like
Mhm.
you've met one
Yeah.
because everyone's different. What are and there's different phases. So
Yeah, there is. I
you
mean,
know, your
we've
symptoms might start out just very like light and minimal, and then all of a sudden you're like having major night sweats, and
right.
you're like, what the hell just happened? So yeah,
Yeah,
you want
it's
to go? You want to start?
and well, where do I begin? But no, I think you hit the net. Like, and also like we're like there's like pre-menopausal and perimenopausal and
Yes.
menopausal and postmenopausal, and it really is different for every single
Yes.
woman.
And
Right?
by the way, it can start as early as age 30,
Yeah.
which is
Mhm.
crazy to me. I thought before I read about a lot of this, I thought that, menopausal symptoms didn't start until your 40s.
Right.
But I was wrong
Hmm.
because there are women out there who have had to have hysterectomies at the age of 30 for one
Yes.
reason or
Whatever.
another.
Yeah. Hmm.
And were forced into menopause, therefore. But it can start as early as 35 naturally.
Absolutely. I
So,
think I read somewhere recently, and I may have even mentioned it on a previous podcast or
mhm.
blog post or whatever, but that new studies show that women spend almost 3 decades in some phase of menopause.
Yeah.
And what happens is we go to the doctor. At least, I'm going to share my personal story.
Hmm.
I have always said I'm like that undiagnosable patient.
Uh-huh.
Like I should have been Dr. House's patient. Dr. House is the only human on this planet I believe that could ever
You did have a
diagnose
pretty
me.
tough journey. I have to say, y'all. Like when she was going through it, I was like, wow.
I
I was like,
know.
that's awful. And you know, but she has come out the other end and she is like a different person.
Thriving. 51
Different
and
person.
thriving, y'all. And I wonder too, like how many of the things that, like when I say I'm undiagnosable, like obviously I have a couple things that have made it hard to diagnose me. One,
Mm,
I played sports my entire life,
mm.
and I was also very tall from a very young age. So
Yeah.
from like a joint and muscle component,
You just
I'm a
thought that
hot
that's
mess.
right.
Right.
Well, you probably attributed to that to
Yes,
all of
to
that.
all of that. And then
Sports and stuff.
being a business owner, and you can relate to this
Mhm,
because you're a business
mhm.
owner, like,
Yep.
and we both had high pressure,
Yes.
high touch,
Yeah.
very involved in our
Goals.
communities, very involved with our staff, very involved with our customers.
Yep.
And it's just that stress. And I can't tell you how many times I'd go to the doctor and they'd be like, it's stress, it's stress, it's stress.
Mhm.
And then after I turned 40, it was, you're just getting older.
Mhm.
You're getting old. I'm like, really?
I mean,
So
that is it, right?
yeah,
Kind of in a
no
nutshell.
shit, Sherlock.
But if you really pinpoint, I mean, I think the for me, I think what I'm seeing and hearing is that people are, yes, we're getting older. I get it, but it's like there are certain things that you can do so that
Right.
you don't have to suffer. And a lot of it
Yeah.
has to do with hormones,
Yeah.
or lack thereof. So it's like you just need to. I think people just need to be re-educated
Hmm.
on. It may not be depression. It may not be
That you're going crazy.
osteoporosis, although
Hmm.
but that might be one of the symptoms.
Hmm.
But it's more than that.
Yeah.
So, and I think that that's really what we've both discovered in on our journeys is
Without a
that
doubt.
there's always something else that you should ask about and advocate for yourself,
That's it
when
right
you
there
are
for
at
me.
your GP or your
Mhm. Absolutely.
whatever kind of doctor you're going to. So
It's because my road from, and I'll go into the details here in a second, but my road from uterine ablation to full blown abdominal hysterectomy
mhm.
was because I relied so heavily on the words of my OBGYN
Yeah,
and not didn't take my unique
situation.
situation
Yeah.
and go in and advocate
So
for
let's talk
myself.
about that
Yeah.
because for people out there who don't know what uterine ablation is,
Yeah.
tell us what your symptoms were and like what led you to that
Okay.
point of the discussion with your doctor and then how that transformed into your hysterectomy.
Yeah. Okay. So let's see. It all started back when I was 13 years old, right? Like
Wow.
I got my first period at 13,
Hmm.
and from the very first day, had the worst period ever. Like I don't ever remember a time, right? Not having.
I was an unfortunate heavy bleeder.
Yeah. Yes.
Sorry, TMI.
And
But yeah.
so I read somewhere today because I was doing a little bit of research that doctors consider a heavy flow soaking through a pad or a tampon every 2 hours, right? I was wearing heavy flow. I was wearing those pads that like start at your belly button and end at like the base of your back.
Like the diaper.
I could have just put a diaper on and a super plus tampon. Now they have one that's even bigger than super plus. What do they
Poor
call it?
thing.
Massive
This was
AF
in
is
your
what they call it.
teens?
This was in my teens all the way. Like I've
Wow.
always had to double up. Always had to
Mm,
double up. And it's
okay.
funny, I like mention it to my daughter. Like, I'll mention it to Sophia
Mm,
sometimes when she gets heavy and she's like, I'm not wearing like she's so anti-pad. And I was like, I don't even remember a life without a pad. I don't because
yeah.
the pad had to catch the blood that was seeping rapidly through the Super
Yeah.
Plus tampon.
Well, I was in the same boat,
Yeah,
for sure.
horrible.
And when you're growing up, you hear these women who are like, like they barely bleed,
I
or
know, or they
you're
don't
like,
get a period,
why?
which is a whole nother
Like,
challenge. Yeah,
like, oh,
yeah,
bitch. Like,
yeah. No, I
I
know.
wish I was like that because it is such a pain in the butt.
Oh,
Literally, you're
it
just like you
is.
gotta like, ugh.
But the grass isn't greener though either
No
because
white
I
pants.
no white pants.
Nope.
No white pants.
Nope.
Well, and it's interesting because it was a so anyway, so when I was a teenager, not
Yeah.
to get too far ahead, but when I was a teenager and was in high school getting ready to go to college,
Mhm.
I did go on the birth control pill. And
Yes,
that
that
did
is.
help
It
regulate
does.
the period a bit.
Yeah.
But you don't want to stand the pill forever, first of
Yeah.
all. And then when I got married and we wanted to have children, I went off the pill. I
Mm.
mean, it took 5 seconds. My period, it was again
Mm.
full blown
Myrtle,
all over
myrtle, myrtle.
again.
Yeah.
And uh, so
Wow.
I didn't go back on the pill because I thought I was gonna have more children, but Sophia is my only birthed child.
Yeah.
So I suffered, I mean I suffered through it. And then about a year after Sophia was born, and I don't know if you remember this. Remember, I used to bruise. I still bruise. I still bruise badly. I've had
Mhm.
anemia in the past. I've had low iron in the past. I've
Mhm.
had low vitamin D in the past.
Yeah.
Vitamin E, you name all the vitamins, low, 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 low. But do
Mhm.
you remember about a year after I gave birth to her, I was bruising so bad. It looked
Yes.
like Tom was beating me. Like
Yeah.
the doctor and his mother actually pulled him aside and were like, are you physically
Yeah.
abusing your wife?
No, and I remember this very distinctly because you were even thinking you may have an autoimmune disease.
I got
Yeah.
tested for cancer.
Yep.
Then I went to a specialist
It was
at
scary.
UVA Hospital in Charlottesville. They
Yeah.
tested me for Marfan syndrome,
Yeah.
which is like this weird like disorder. If you have a long wingspan, I'm tall and I have long
Yeah.
arms. Anyway, in my situation, everything always came back negative. I
Yeah.
never.
I remember that. And I remember thinking to myself, God, I can't even imagine not knowing what is happening,
Yeah. Mhm.
and just like, okay, well, that happened. And then I remember, you went through this period and then
Mhm.
it got better, but then the symptoms changed.
Yes.
And yeah, I
It was
mean,
then I had that horrible digestive issue
yep,
where, not to be TMI, but then I went through a few years later where I would wake up in the middle of the night and literally be on the toilet for 4 straight hours. I'd lose all my bowels and
yeah.
then some, and
And
I
this
couldn't even go
started
to work.
between like the age of what, 35
I
and
was
45?
probably like 35 to about 40 was like the major, because I had Sophia at 32. So
Okay.
the first major issue was the bruising. So I guess that was about 33.
Okay.
And then the other like major issue was that digestive problem. And I lost 14 pounds in 2 months, like without even trying. So I had to have a colonoscopy,
Was
which
that
I'm
your
getting ready to
third?
have my next one.
I know. 35 was
I
that?
was about 35
Okay.
when that happened. 30,
Gotcha.
yeah, 35 or 36.
Mm.
And again, had a colonoscopy, had the camera that goes down your GI tract. Like I had all my innards
Mm.
examined in ways that are just,
Yeah.
you don't want to be examined, but you have to.
Right.
And again, the only thing that they could say that I had was IBS.
Yeah. I remember
And
you telling me that.
yeah, and
Mhm.
interesting, as I've read more, especially now post hysterectomy, I have read that there really is a correlation between digestive sort of distress and inflammation
Yeah.
and heavy
Hormonal.
periods,
Oh, yeah.
which
Well, that's
obviously
true.
leads back, yeah, and
That is true.
that's exactly
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, and again, I think it.
Now, were you on the birth control pill at this point?
No, I never went back on the pill
Okay.
after I gave birth to
See,
Sophia.
I think that that helped me regulate my periods and not make them so heavy. So just
Yes.
FYI, I'm sure a lot of people do that as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
But anyway, go
Absolutely.
ahead.
And then don't you have an IUD? What do you have?
I have a Mirena.
Mirena.
Yeah,
Okay.
but it's like on its last, year of
Okay.
effectiveness, I
Okay.
think. So I think next year is when I'm scheduled to have it removed, which I'm like very concerned about because then I won't
You're
have
afraid of.
any hormones, more than likely, just based on my last doctor's appointment when they took my blood. But back to you.
Yeah.
So you okay? So right around your mid-30s, IBS.
Yeah,
Okay.
everything. IBS, heavy periods again.
Yep.
Weird, like crazy. I would have. I'm just trying to think of all the times I went back to the doctor. I went back one time because I had dry mouth so bad,
Wow.
and I couldn't get rid of it. I didn't know what was going on. So she tested me for Sjogren's syndrome.
Mm.
By the way, I've been tested for every autoimmune disease under the sun. I keep testing negative. I went through a phase where I had alopecia. Do you remember when I was losing the hair in the front of my crown of my head?
Yeah.
Uh, I went through. I went through a nerve, like tingling in my face, like
Oh, wow.
weird nerve. She put me on gabapentin. Is it
Yeah, I've heard of
gabapentin?
gabapentin.
Anyway, I was having nerve issues and I was like tingling all
Wow.
over. Very strange things. But again, nothing ever came back conclusive.
Yeah.
And I mention all of this because since my hysterectomy, I have felt like a whole new woman. And I
Yeah.
shared this with you. The only thing I still suffer with are obviously the degenerative issues that I'm going, and that I do attribute to playing sports,
Yeah.
being in retail,
Yeah. And aging.
being
Just
super
math.
tall, and just again growing so quickly at such a young. My tendons never really matured enough to
Mm.
protect my muscles, and so
Mhm.
those things are just always going to. I'm going to have arthritis, and I already have
Right.
some arthritis, but the rest of the ailments, I just wonder how much of it was contributed to the issues that I was going through with, my period,
Yeah.
cysts on my ovaries, fibroids, because I've gotten fibroids in my breast, I've had fibroids in my uterus.
Mhm.
Um, uh, so I just, I've always wondered maybe at some point we'll have a doctor who can break it all down
Yeah.
for us, because
Seriously.
now that I'm on the other side of it, it's amazing to me how I don't feel any of those other issues.
And that to me, I mean, I think if I were to guess, I'm not obviously a doctor, but I feel that all or most of it was hormonal.
Yeah, I
And
think you might be right about
yeah,
that.
and
Mhm.
I only say that because I started going through my stuff a few years back. I mean, probably way back. I started taking progesterone. Probably, let me see, how old was I? Probably in my late 30s, and then to help me sleep.
Mhm.
And then, so it started there, and I still had my Mirena in. I've had a Mirena for like 10 years, or now 12 years. But like, so I don't really, so I think that help regulate my
Mhm.
hormones.
Mhm.
But I just feel like you, if you're not having your hormones regulated, I think they can wreak real
Oh,
havoc on
havoc.
your system.
Totally.
And I mean,
Mhm.
just based on what you're
Yeah.
telling me,
Mhm.
like, and now that you're, after your hysterectomy, post
Mhm.
hysterectomy, you are on estrogen.
Yes, I'm on estrogen. And
And
before that, just to get back to what you were saying,
yeah,
before the ablation, I was put on progesterone.
okay,
There are a couple times where they tried progesterone pills, and it just didn't do anything for me. Like it just,
really,
yeah, mm-mm,
wow,
mm-mm,
they didn't
yeah,
help you sleep, because that's
not
really what
really.
they
Mm-mm,
they tell you to take it at night.
no,
Interesting.
yeah.
Okay.
And then for like my digestive problems, because they've always sort of paralleled each other.
Hmm.
I mean, they tried a number of things, but I think the one that they were like hopeful was Linzess. They
Uh,
put me on Linzess. That didn't do anything for me either.
mm,
So I remember. I don't know if it was my first primary physician when I moved here was like, being a woman is tough because there's so much packed right into your abdomen, and to be able to precisely pinpoint
yeah,
is really hard
yeah,
because you've got so many organs
yeah.
in this amount of space.
Hmm.
And now that I'm older and wiser, I think just that statement alone should have been a marker for me to then to
Mm.
just keep digging and just keep probing and just keep
So
demanding to
let's
do more and more and more.
yeah. So let's take them down this path. So
Yeah,
so let's talk about the ablation first.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and you tell them that, because I this is not my journey. I've never had
Mhm.
to go through anything like this, but I'm
And
not
hopefully you
saying
won't
I'm
have to.
glad that she did, but for your benefit, I think that it's great for her to talk about her journey.
Yeah. Because I'll start with this. Had I been given the choice, and I don't really felt like I was given the choice because I was 45 and a half, 46 when this journey started,
Mhm.
I would have said hysterectomy all the way.
Yeah, immediate.
But there was a lot of information that I was not given about ablations. The big one being that they can fail. I
Mhm.
had no idea that an ablation could fail.
Mhm.
And then when they do fail, I read that first of all, 10% of all ablations fail.
Mhm.
And then for most women, when they have a failed ablations, they end up having a hysterectomy within 5 years.
Wow.
So you're sort of going through all of this
Mm.
like on a wing and a prayer, just like hoping, okay,
Yeah.
right? So anyway, what happened was my periods got super, super bad. I was at the point where there were times where I would have to just stand in the shower
Mm.
because it looked like somebody was murdering me. The blood flow
I remember you
would
telling me.
not stop.
Mm.
And, I would get to the point where the first 2 days of my period, I would be
Mhm.
completely bedridden,
Yeah.
only because I needed to be near a shower or a toilet
Mm.
because the blood flow was just so
Yeah.
massive.
Mhm.
And it was a vacation. Um, we were on Martha's Vineyard, and I was wearing white jeans. And now I don't know if it was just like foresight that I brought a sweater that I could wrap around me.
Mm.
And I got out of the car to go look at a lighthouse with my husband. And my daughter's like, "Mom, you have blood all over your ass." And I was like, "What?" And I like, so that was like the straw that broke the camel's back for me because I ended up having to walk around Martha's Vineyard the entire afternoon with like literally
A sweater
blood
around you.
seeping through all of yeah.
Oh Lord, girl.
Because and I wasn't having my period. I didn't bring a tampon. I didn't bring a it's just like the bottom just decided to fall out. And so that was enough for me to be like, enough is enough.
Yeah.
Right? Like I need a solution now.
Yeah.
So I went to my OBGYN at the time, and I will say this, between my ablation, since my ablation and my hysterectomy, I have changed doctors. And that's because of our health care.
So tell everybody what an ablation is.
Yeah. So an ablation is it's a surgical procedure
Mhm.
that uses electric currents, and it can either be like heat or cold to remove or destroy your endometrial lining of the uterus.
Okay. So
Um,
so it helps decrease or stop the bleeding.
it helps lighten or stop the bleeding.
Got it.
Correct. Some of the reasons why a doctor will propose an ablation instead of hysterectomy. One is age. It's less invasive.
Mm.
It's an outpatient surgery.
Okay.
It's local
Yeah.
anesthesia.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
and it sounded great to me. My doctor was like, you probably won't ever have a period again.
Mm.
And my thought process was, okay, so I'm 46.
Mhm.
I'm about 5 years away from menopause, probably.
Mhm.
So the chances of me, you know, really bleeding again are slim. I was, trying to do
Yeah. You're trying to.
girl math in my head.
Yeah. You're
Right?
yes.
Yeah. So I I went for MRI just to, make sure everything was good before
Yeah.
we went in for the procedure.
Okay.
And I distinctly remember when we were talking about the results, she said, you have one small fibroid, but it's not affecting your uterus. It's in like your muscle lining outside of your uterus.
Hmm.
I'm not going to worry about it. I think you're good. Probably nothing's going to happen.
Okay.
We're good. I say this because since then I have learned, and the whole reason why I had to have a hysterectomy was because of that damn fibroid. But
Mm.
I'm sharing this for anyone that's considering an ablation. I've read this 3 different places. Fibroids should be removed before an ablation.
Mm.
So even if you have a fibroid that is not in your uterus, near your uterus, affecting your uterus,
Mhm.
if your doctor says, let's not touch it, I personally would say, F that,
Please remove
take
it.
that damn fibroid out of me.
Yeah.
So, because, ask your
No,
question.
no, no. Yeah, I think you were going to answer.
Okay.
It. Go ahead.
Because fibroids can grow and they can get massive and they can destroy any surgical work that has been done.
Mhm.
They can cause the ablation to fail.
Okay.
So I found out that ablations could fail by doing my own research.
Okay.
And there's actually a term for it. It's called LOAF, which is late onset ablation failure.
Mm.
And essentially what happens is you either start bleeding again really heavily,
Mhm.
or I read about this. Now, this sounds horrific. I read about this earlier. It's called hematometra,
Mm.
which is where the blood can't get through
Mm.
and distends the blood in your uterus.
Oh God, I can't even imagine. So, do you think that if you had that fibroid removed, that
That wouldn't have had to have a hysterectomy?
yes,
I don't know.
there's still a small
There's still
chance.
probably a small chance, but what led to the hysterectomy is
Was
that yeah.
okay.
So what happened was I have the ablation. I'm 46 years old. Life is great. 4 years go by.
Yeah,
Fantastic. And I don't want to say life is great. Let me back up a second.
I was gonna say.
Life was more manageable. But one of the other things that, at least for me, and I know, again, every woman's body is different and everyone reacts
So
differently.
you were bleeding less.
I wasn't bleeding at all,
Oh, at
but
all?
I had the world's worst cramps. I
Oh,
still felt like I had PMS. I
okay.
still got bloated.
So
I
after the
still
ablation,
cramped.
you were having all the symptoms
All the
of like
symptoms.
like
Like a period, but
period.
without the blood.
Okay,
Mhm.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the cramping was so bad, Penny. And I know I've shared this with you before. Like I would lay on my bathroom floor and like in the fetal position, like writhing in pain. And I remember one time I was like, "Honey, I think you need to take me to the emergency. Like I feel like I'm dying."
Yeah.
And
That's awful.
it's horrible.
And you also were having, I want to say, some digestive issues.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah. So I got severe constipation,
Yes, I remember.
like severe
Yeah,
constipation.
which is like the opposite of IBS.
Which yes, well, there's IBS-C and then there's IBS-D. So you
Oh.
can have IBS with constipation, or you can have it with
Oh,
diarrhea. Like
interesting.
there's two totally
Did not know
different.
this.
Yeah, and I've also I've swung the pendulum.
It sounds like it.
I've had the diarrhea and I've had
Jeez.
constipation.
So
Oh,
Okay, so 4 years,
yeah.
you're obviously having other symptoms, but
Mhm.
not bleeding.
Not
So
bleeding.
what then happened after that?
Right. So uh, about 4.5 years later, I start bleeding again.
Mm.
And I start bleeding. So this was, so let me go back now because this was, let's say, 11 months ago, almost a year ago.
Okay.
Okay. So we're about a year in now.
Mhm.
We had actually just moved to our new house and I start bleeding again. And the cramping comes back like,
With
because
a
the cramping
vengeance.
did subside over time,
Mm,
but it came back, yeah, with a vengeance.
mm.
And the bleeding wouldn't stop. So I think I bled for almost 20 days straight when I decided I needed to go
How
to
old
the
were you at this
doctor.
point?
I'm 50.
No, no, when this started,
When what started?
the bleeding and all that,
Oh,
like the uncontrollable bleeding.
uncontrollably, like standing in the shower, I was in my late to mid 40s. Because it must have been like 42 because I had the ablation at 46.
Okay, but then you stopped bleeding for 4 years,
Yep.
and then
And
you
then I started
started
again.
at around
Yes.
what, like 49?
No, 50.
Oh,
Hmm.
oh,
Yep.
okay,
I was 50.
I
Hmm.
gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, so I go back to my doctor and my new doctor, and I'm like, I can't stop bleeding. I'm bleeding. If there's 30 days in a month, I'm bleeding 20 of the days in the month.
And I remember.
And yeah, it was so freaking. And I
Yeah.
looked like I was 9 months pregnant. I mean, I felt like I was 9 months pregnant. I looked like I was 9 months pregnant. I was
Mhm.
also in between the ablation and the hysterectomy, definitely in perimenopause because I got the menopause belly.
Yeah.
My metabolism literally shut down. And I was always that girl, and don't hate me, but I was the girl growing up where I could eat a whole pizza and not
Not
gain a
gain an
pound.
ounce. Right.
And then I got to the point where if I looked at a slice of pizza, I gained 10
Mhm.
pounds.
Yep.
And it didn't matter how much I worked out.
Which is what a lot of women go through. I mean,
it's
like,
so frustrating.
well, and that I think obviously it's hormones, the lack of estrogen,
Hmm.
because you need estrogen to regulate all of that, your metabolism. So
Yeah.
I, so you were going through it as you were also like going
Going through
through
it.
the fibroid stuff, and
Yeah.
I mean, you just had the
It's like a
trifecta of like
yeah.
crazy
It
symptoms.
was hell. I don't know how my husband's still married to me, but he is. We've gotten through it.
Well, your
So
husband, yeah.
yeah, yeah, we
Anyway,
know he's
she's
amazing.
awesome. But yeah, so anyway, so you went through this for
Yep.
what, a year?
Only
That
no, I did not let this go very long
okay.
because I knew there was something wrong because I had an ablation. So I'm like, why is my body breaking down
Yes.
on me?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And that's when I learned that an ablation could fail and all of
Got
this
it.
other stuff. So then I go to my new doctor. She orders an MRI, and she sends me to actually to the hospital to go actually meet with the surgeon. Like I didn't
Mm.
even go back to see her, so I was like, oh, something is something
Mm.
is major
Yeah.
that I'm actually going to directly to the surgeon, who was my surgical team. And I love it because they were headed by two women, which made me so happy. Because listen, women know women's bodies,
That's
so
true.
that immediately made me felt comfortable because I'm like, oh, I'm dealing with two females. Now,
Mm.
there were men on the surgical team, but they were not heading up the surgery.
Yeah.
So I go in and I meet the doctor, and she says, "Wow, you have a high tolerance for pain." And I'm like, "Okay, well, yes, I do." And she was like, "I don't even know how you're walking. You have a fibroid the size of a grapefruit in your uterus."
That's
And
crazy.
so essentially, what's happening is my uterus is working overtime,
Mm.
trying to get around this fibroid. That the two of them are, duking it out.
Yeah.
And that's essentially why I am bleeding all the time, 24/7, in constant pain.
Jeez.
Right.
That's
So
nuts.
it's nuts. So then, she's talking about like the different types of hysterectomies, which I'll lay out here in a second.
Mm.
But she says to me, I think we're going to have to do an abdominal. So basically, she was like, you need a hysterectomy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You need a hysterectomy.
Yeah.
And
You're like, woohoo.
and she did lay out the option. She's like, no, I can go in and I can just take out the uterus and the cervix, or I can go in and I can take out your fallopian tubes, your ovaries,
Mhm.
and she laid out like what the risks and the rewards and the challenges were,
Mhm.
and she said the thing is if I take out your ovaries, you will automatically go into menopause. I'm like, well, I freaking feel like I've been in menopause for about 3 years now, so what the
Yeah.
hell's the difference?
Right?
And for me, and again, this was my personal choice. I have suffered I mean, this is 37 years of suffering on and on,
Yeah.
this
Highs
this
and lows.
pendulum swing of suffering.
Yeah.
And I'm sure all of these other outlier symptoms that I felt throughout my life probably had some sort of correlation to
Mhm.
what was going on with, my um, my uterus and cervix and ovaries. And so I decided. I said, I mean, I stopped her mid sentence, and I was like, take it all
Yeah.
out,
Take
and
it out.
anything extra that might be in there, because
Right.
I already felt menopausal.
Yeah.
I think the only symptom of menopause out of the 8,900 that exist now these days, the only one I never really felt full blown was a hot flash.
Really?
I would have like spells, but
Well,
I never
well, you made a comment to me the other day. You were like, I think maybe I was just in so much other pain
pain.
that I
Yeah,
didn't even notice any hot flash.
probably.
But
Yeah.
I mean, a hot flash, I don't know. I think they're pretty, um,
Oh,
like,
I've seen a woman sit across from me literally go into a hot flash. I mean, it is
yeah,
not pretty. It's her hairline. I mean, like, I distinctly remember this one woman one time, and I felt so bad for her. Like, you just saw the beads of sweat just like in her hair, and then her face gets all, and her neck was all flushed. And I
yeah,
was like, oh my gosh, this poor woman is literally having a hot flash,
yeah.
like right now.
And there are different types of
Oh,
hot
yeah.
flashes because I
Mhm.
don't sweat when I have a hot flash. Mine is like an internal
Internal. Yeah.
inferno, and it's like, and it feels like, for me, it
You're
feels
burning
like
from the
I'm
inside
getting
out.
sick. No, it
Oh,
feels like I'm getting like the flu or something.
interesting.
But you do feel feverish. You
Yeah.
feel warm or hot or whatever. But for me, it's also like a weird nausea kind of, when you get that first wave of like something's off, like I do not feel good.
Yes. Yeah.
When
Hmm.
right
Hmm.
before you get sick. That to me is what it feels like. Because
Okay.
I have been in the car on my way to a party, and I'm like, da da da, Kevin's driving, and I'm just in, and then all of a sudden I'm like, what is happening? This is the like when I first started having them. I was like, and I'd be like, babe, I don't, I'm not feeling so great. I don't know if I can go. Like, all like it was weird, and so and then it would be like it would go away.
Hmm.
We'd get to the place and I'd drink some water or whatever, and it would be fine. Well, I didn't realize that I was having the hot flash. This was, let's probably like started 5 years ago.
Okay.
But yeah, hot flashes are no joke, and they're worse. I hate them at night because you're just like, damn it. You get up and you can't fall back asleep.
Yeah.
You just have to kind of sit there and just like deal with it. So yeah, they are no fun, and I'm glad that you didn't have to
I
go through that
didn't, but I
part.
had wicked insomnia, so I don't know which is probably insomnia with
Well,
a
I
hot
have
flash
that
was
anyway.
probably like the worst. But I definitely went through phases where I mean
Yeah,
I could fall asleep, I wouldn't stay asleep, and then it's like I'm just staring at the ceiling for
yeah.
hours and tossing and turning. I mean, it's a really
And some women, like, I don't sweat like when I'm having a hot flash,
mhm,
but like women have told me that they wake up and it's like their sheets are wet.
yeah,
And I'm like, whoa,
yeah,
that's crazy. Like I have them, but not to that degree.
yeah.
Like it's,
I know. Again, maybe that was like God's way of saying, I'm going to spare you the worst symptom of all, because I
I
felt
don't
like I was
know if I'd
piled
call
on
that
with
worse
all of them.
after hearing what you've
I
been
know.
through.
No,
I don't. I think I'd rather have that than the bleeding, honestly.
the
But
bleeding is absolutely horrific, women are warriors. The fact I don't care if you bleed a little, or you don't bleed at all, or you are like Mount Vesuvius, or not, what's someone like a tidal wave of blood. You're a champ to just even be able to
I'm
manage it
telling
at
you,
any. And then if you're like me, where I was literally almost every day of the month, that's when it got just out of control for me. I
yeah,
was like, no, this can't continue.
yeah,
So the other challenge, and it wasn't really a challenge, but one of the moments where I was highly frustrated with having done the ablation first
mm,
and not the hysterectomy was my new doctor, who was sort
Mm,
of going through all of the precautions to get me ready in this processes to get me ready for the hysterectomy,
mhm,
needed to do a biopsy
mm.
of my cervix and my uterus.
Okay.
But because the scar tissue,
Mhm.
so that's another side effect. And it can be a side effect that interrupts um, your body. I guess it interrupts the ability for you to sort of go back to um, sort of like normal endometrial living, is what I'm going to call it.
Okay.
Because if you build up so much scar tissue, it can also be very difficult to diagnose endometrial cancer.
Oh.
So, and here's the other thing is that ablations, while they burn and destroy the endometrial lining, I
Mhm.
think is what they call it, the endometrium regenerates. So there's no guarantee it's not going to grow back. It's
Oh,
not going to regenerate. And
interesting.
that's where the ablation failure comes in. Is if that
Oh, so if you're one
happens,
of these people
if
where
you're
it
one of
does
these
grow
people,
back,
yeah, then
then
you could be screwed in a number of different ways. And for me, it
and it's
was
usually is that the process? Like if you have an ablation failure, do they typically recommend hysterectomies at that point? Is that
yeah. There's
usually
really
is
kind of
that sort of
yeah.
the
hmm
trajectory?
The trajectory is that
Okay.
yeah, it's
Okay.
not you're
So
gonna have to have a
that's
hysterectomy.
usually how people come to get a hysterectomy. It's not. Can people elect to have a hysterectomy? Like at a certain age, can you say, "Hey, I want to, avoid any kind of, cancer in my uterus, my ovaries. Can I just get it removed?" Is that something that you've heard about?
I feel like I don't know the direct answer to that, but my assumption would be that if you have a family history
Mm,
of ovarian cancer and any cancer of the female organs,
hmm.
um, then you could probably go in and say,
Yeah.
uh, listen, or breast cancer or whatever, whatever. You could probably go in and be like, I just want this done,
Yeah.
you know. Uh, I don't. I think it just women that have endometriosis.
Hmm.
Now it's interesting. I for years thought I had endometriosis. I did not. I actually was diagnosed with, and I'm going to see if I can pronounce it right. Um, where did I write it down? It's add-on. Where did I write it down? Oh, adenomyosis.
Mm,
So it's Adenomyosis. I'd never heard of
mm,
it
hmm.
in my entire life. And so I'm going to give you the Mayo Clinic's description of it.
Okay.
So adenomyosis occurs when the tissue that normally lines the uterus, so the endometrial tissue, grows into the muscular wall of the uterus. The displaced tissue continues to act normally, thickening, breaking down, and bleeding during each menstrual cycle. An enlarged uterus is painful and can cause heavy periods,
Mm,
and heavy periods can result. Now, what's interesting is that the only way to fully confirm a diagnosis and the cure
hmm.
of this
Hmm.
is with a hysterectomy.
I was going to say by going in and,
You have
and
to
doing it.
take the uterus out.
Yeah. Wow.
So I don't think in my case, like when I know a few women that have endometriosis, and when they talk about their symptoms and their pain and their plight,
Hmm.
it's not much different than what I was feeling.
Yeah.
So if you're feeling that and you're not getting a diagnosis of endometriosis,
Hmm.
that might be a case to go into your doctor and say, hey, listen, we've tried everything under the sun. We've tried from A to Z. I really think the only course is A, have you heard of this?
Yeah.
B, what is it?
Yeah.
C, do you think I have it?
Yeah.
Or could I have it? I think you can do an MRI and it can give you a sense on whether or not that might be your
Yeah.
diagnosis.
Yeah.
But the only way
To
to
really
fully
know
know
is
is
it,
to have your uterus removed.
wow.
And then that is the cure.
and then
To have your
and they're
uterus
like,
removed.
so they find out and it's the cure at
And
the
it's
same
the cure
time.
at the same time.
That's crazy.
Isn't that crazy?
So that is. And one of the other things that happened to you that they did that nobody knew about until they went in to remove your uterus was the
My bowels had wrapped
Yes.
around my uterus.
Which is so. Let's talk
Yeah.
about that a little
Okay.
bit.
Yeah. So again, I've talked about like I think that there's this correlation between digestive distress and like
Yes.
heavy periods and menstrual issues and
Mhm.
um in my case, so it I've always had digestive problems, and they always seem to flare up when I'm having my menstrual cycle.
Mhm.
But when I went through this, after my ablation failed, and I was trying to figure out what the heck was going on, I got super ridiculously bloated again.
Mhm.
Again, I'll never forget. A friend of mine's daughter asked her if I was pregnant. I was like, "Girl, I can't have kids."
See, I don't remember you looking like
No.
that.
Well, I did a very good job of camouflaging it. And I also was starting to get that menno belly. And so it was like
Mm.
I just attributed it to menno belly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and again, this is what you do. It's sort of like process of elimination. You're like, well, or deduction. It's like, well, I am getting close to menopausal age. I'm probably in perimenopause. So I'm chalking it up to X.
Yeah.
When it could be something completely different.
Yeah.
And in my case, it was. Um, so to get back to the scar tissue issue, the other thing with scar tissue is that my doctor is not able to do a biopsy. She could not biopsy because the scar tissue was so thick.
Yeah.
So that kind of, for her, from a precautionary standpoint, was like, I don't really know what I'm working with.
Mm.
So I'm gonna recommend an abdominal hysterectomy.
Mhm.
And while abdominal hysterectomies are the most popular, so apparently like over 50% of hysterectomies are abdominal.
Mhm.
And I could be wrong, but I feel like had I advocated for a hysterectomy at 46, I knew I wasn't having any more kids,
Mhm.
right? Like that pasture, like
Yeah.
we those days were long gone.
Moving on. Yeah.
I probably could have had a laparoscopic or a vaginal or a robotic hysterectomy,
Oh.
and I wouldn't have an 8-inch scar along my bikini line.
Oh.
You
If you
know,
had opted
if I
earlier.
if I had just said no, I want to. Now,
Mm.
with that, I think when they do the incision laparoscopically, I think that's just the removal of the uterus. I think ultimately, if you want to have all of your organs taken out, like I did,
Mhm.
abdominal is the
The only
best
way
way to
Oh,
go.
the best
It
way.
might be the
Okay.
only way to go. Again, I'm
I
not a
was gonna
doctor, but I'm
say, yeah.
assuming it's the only way to go. Um,
Hmm.
so who knows whether I would have opted one way or another.
Yeah.
But I certainly feel deeply that I would have eliminated 4.5 years of complete and utter hell.
Hmm.
My life is compromised for so many years
Yeah.
because I didn't just bite the bullet and
I
have a
mean,
hysterectomy.
scars aside, I would have probably opted for the more invasive, the complete abdominal, only because, just to your point, I feel like the ablation failed. So if you were to get something like this laparoscopic, or can't remember the other
So
ones.
it's laparoscopic, vaginal, abdominal, and then robotic is very similar to laparoscopic. The difference is that it's robotic hands and not human hands.
Okay.
So they say it's just more precise.
Okay.
Yeah,
All
but
right.
it's incisions through
Yes.
your lower abdomen, and
But
that's
they
how
also probably went in through your abdomen because of the fibroid, I'm guessing.
they had. Well, that's exactly what it was.
Yeah.
She said the fibroid has just taken over your uterus,
Yeah.
and basically now your uterus is so long
Yeah.
that
They
we have to
probably
go
wanted
in
to
and-
make sure that they got all
Oh,
of
they
that
had
out.
to. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I get that. But I also think that it was a blessing because now that they made sure that everything was removed, even your ovaries.
Yeah.
And so your chances of any kinds of those issues or cancers,
Right. And that
like,
was what it was.
eliminated.
Yes, exactly.
And so for me, that would be what I would probably opt
yes,
for.
without a doubt.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, at this point, as we're having this discussion, I'm only a few months from turning 51.
Yeah.
Right. And so I'm like, yeah, get it all. Like
Yeah.
I'm trying to eliminate all of the potential
Mhm.
risks that could exist for me as a woman.
Yeah.
So if we can just, take ovarian cancer off the
Mhm.
table, take cervical cancer
Mhm.
off the table.
Mhm.
Yeah, let's do it.
So after your surgery, I remember, you had, quite a bit of recovery time,
I'm
and
still recovering a little bit.
well, sure, yeah, and because you had it done in
I had it
October
done. Listen, I had my surgery on Friday the 13th
of, of
October
October.
of October.
Yes. And I remember, it was definitely slow going. You were in bed, basically for a couple of weeks.
Well, you're not ever fully bedridden because
Yeah.
they want you walking like up.
Right.
But yes,
Yeah, but
you're taking it really slow.
correct.
Can't lift anything.
Yeah.
Can't definitely dependent on other people.
Yeah. But to
for a
me,
while.
you had a very successful healing,
Without a
and
doubt.
recovery, which thank God. But uh, and I think the jury was out on how am I going to feel after this,
Right.
because when you have your uterus moved, there goes the estrogen,
Yeah,
and any kind of
absolutely.
hormone.
Mhm.
So let's talk about that,
Yeah.
and like how did your doctor you know um, recommend that you, I guess, make that transition after
Yes.
after the hysterectomy,
Yeah.
post surgery?
So she recommended hormone replacement. And
Immediately?
immediately, like
Mhm.
literally, I put my first patch on my ass
The next day.
the next day, like it was. Yeah, I think I started it on a. It's kind of like the pill. You started on a Sunday, and then you switch. So I switch out my patch every Sunday,
Mhm.
and it has for me has been an absolute lifesaver. I did put it in. I think the one I'm on is estrobial is the
Mhm.
patch that I'm
Yeah, I've
on.
heard of
I
that.
switch it out every Sunday,
Mhm.
and I have not had one major. I mean, if other little things are happening, you know,
Mhm.
I don't know if I necessarily equate it to menopause, but I have more energy.
Mhm.
Um, I have not had any hot flashes. I can poo like a champ. It so feels so amazing to be regular again. Like it is the most beautiful thing in the world. Um, I don't have aversions to food because one of the other issues that I was faced with over the years was like certain foods would cause me to just like I stopped eating bananas, I stopped eating
Did
apples,
they
I
give you
stopped.
nausea?
No, they made me distended. They made me. I
Oh,
felt so bloated.
okay.
I've gone gluten free before. You know this. I've gone gluten free a few times. For me, no, I don't ever really see the difference.
Well, that could have been because of the bowel
Could have
situation.
been absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely,
because she had that
yeah.
situation, when all of this was occurring with her fibroid.
Hmm.
It was interfering with her colon.
Yeah, pretty
Basically,
much.
it was
Hmm.
basically just like pushing all of that together, and so things couldn't
Yeah.
get through. Basically,
We
so
were one big unhappy family inside my house. Like
exactly.
really one big unhappy family.
Yeah,
There was
we
a
all
lot of
crammed
infighting
in
going on
there.
there.
There
There was
was.
a lot of
There was.
infighting going on there.
Yep, they were. It
Yeah,
was.
and yeah, I think everyone's journey for HRT is different, and I know we've discussed that we're going to have on some,
Well, I am going.
you're
in a
going through
month.
it now.
Well, no.
Oh,
Well, I'm going in a month to discuss HRT with my
Okay.
doctor.
Okay.
And after hearing what you've been through, I'm praying to God that I have a very similar reaction if from trying it,
Mhm,
because I am going to
mhm.
try it. I know that people don't believe in it, but because of what I'm going through
Yeah.
currently,
Well, not all. I believe in it.
yeah,
There's a lot of people that yes, there's some people that don't believe, and there's other people that don't. Like I had a friend once say to me, "Well, that's a synthetic HRT." I'm like, I don't care what the hell it's made out of. I feel like a rock star. I feel like a whole new freaking woman. So
I shouldn't
you just
say.
got to go with
Yeah,
what is best for you.
I shouldn't say a lot of people are against it. But there are people out there who opt for more natural forms
Right.
of whatever you want to call it.
Right. And good on you if it's working
Hormone,
for you.
exactly.
Yeah.
So hormone regulation, I guess, is
Yeah.
the word. So
Yeah.
which I've actually been doing. I've been taking all kinds of supplements,
Yep.
and so far they were working for me up until probably about November of last year. I
Mhm.
started feeling like, okay, like I would even like double dose on some things that I was
Mhm.
taking. So I was taking Vitex berry, which is also called chaseberry. I was taking these sort of like proprietary formulated type supplements that had like, I mean, all kinds of things. I'm actually taking one now. I'm going to talk about it
Mhm.
later. I'm doing a video diary on this product called MenoFit, and it's basically it's a product on our website, myworth.com, but it's a company called Meno Labs created this formula for women going through menopause or perimenopause. And it essentially just helps even out your hormones and regulate your hormones. And so I just started it yesterday. And, so far I feel pretty good, but maybe I'm just having a good day.
Might be having a
Who
good day.
knows? So I'm just going to just try to like monitor it over the next couple of weeks, talk about it in my video diary, and then hopefully post about it here in a couple of weeks.
I think that's
Because
great.
my plan is to do that to see if it actually works and helps me feel better. Um, and if I still feel like I need to explore another option, that is when I'm going to talk to my doctor in
Mhm.
mid-February, which I have so many things that are unanswered. So for instance, I still have my Mirena, right?
Yes.
So I don't know if I can take estrogen while I have my Mirena, even though my Mirena is 6 years old. So
Mhm.
essentially, it's pretty much done, right? And you know, but I'm guessing she's going to need to take blood. Which, by the way, I had my blood taken in December, and my GP, she was like, "Oh, no wonder you're having some extra um, uh, symptoms." Because I told her about it. I was like, "I just feel off." Is the only thing that I
Mhm.
could say, because it wasn't the normal symptom that I was having, which was just like I felt off for a few days a month,
Right.
almost like PMS. It was like happening daily, and
Prolonged.
I've been having these discussions with her weekly. Like, I don't know what it is, girl. I'm like, I'm having brain fog. I'm having, I feel like my memory's out the window. I feel like tired,
Mhm. Do you get irritable?
not irritable,
Okay,
but
that's
just
good.
I feel like it's a weird, and I'm going to be very vulnerable by saying this, but it's a very weird, like sad, sort of like mixed with a little bit of like, it's like a weird insecure feeling.
Mm.
And it's like, I'm not like that. I'm a pretty confident person.
Yeah.
I'm a pretty, but maybe the hormones are keeping me, or making me feel, you know what they say? Like, they're like, am I going crazy?
Yeah.
No, you're not going crazy.
Yeah.
And that's what I feel like
Yeah.
sometimes. I'm like, what is wrong with me right
Right.
now? Like, why am I feeling this way?
Right.
Like, I have to like literally get up and do jumping jacks and like, go outside
Yeah.
and, like shock my system back into what I'm hoping would be like feeling like
Yeah.
myself,
There's nothing worse than not being able to knock yourself out of it, right?
Yeah.
Like that's the
It's
thing that's highly frustrating is like,
it is frustrating. That's a great word,
mm,
because I feel frustrated because
yeah.
I know, I meditate, so I know that this is not me.
Mhm.
Like, this is my body going haywire.
Right.
And I recently posted about this doctor who talks about this in this podcast, and her name is Dr. Mary Claire Haver. I'm sure a lot of you know about her. I actually found out about her through the podcast.
Mhm.
It's a Diary of a CEO. I
Mhm.
shared it with you.
Yeah.
Put it on our post, or put it on our social pages. But she talks about when she was, starting her residency, the older doctors, but the more senior doctors there, would talk about how women came in complaining of the same issues that I'm complaining about, but they would minimize and just say, "Oh, she's a WW," and she was like, "Well, what is that for? What does that stand
Wicked
for?"
witch.
No, whiny woman.
Well, wicked witch, whiny woman,
She
same
said
thing.
that they had a code for these whiny women.
Oh.
And she said,
Oh.
yeah.
And I was like whiny woman on steroids,
Let me just tell you
probably.
something. But that
Yeah.
really, that pisses me off, because
Yeah.
it's like, it's life is hard enough to have
Mhm.
to also be
Mhm.
going through what,
Yeah.
all women go through
Mhm.
at this age. So in any case, she talks about the fact that, you're not crazy. There are over, 100 symptoms out there.
Yeah.
And
It's
a
a
lot of it
crazy amount of symptoms.
is emotional and
Mhm.
mental. You think that you are losing your mind. Like,
Excuse me.
and
Yeah. Mhm.
and before it gets, I'm hoping this is like the worst of it, but like, even I'm like, I can't deal with this. This
Yeah.
is not, I don't want to feel like this, even if it's just momentarily, during the day. I don't want to feel like that,
Right.
because it's just, that's not who you are.
Right.
And you almost want to get back. And this is why she's such an inspiration, because when she started taking the estrogen, she was like, I feel like a different
I
person, like a
do.
new person with energy, and
Mhm.
my metabolism's back on
Mhm.
track, and I just feel healthy.
Yeah.
And I just want to get back to healthy.
Mhm.
So, you know, trying some different
Yeah.
things. That's where I am in my journey. Luckily, I didn't have a lot of the physical symptoms that
Right.
she did,
Right.
but I still have the hot flashes. And for
I still have a
me,
little brain fog, not as much as I did. Like I had crazy brain
yeah,
fog before, but
estrogen will
it's
help with that.
still, I mean, it's still a little bit there. I mean, some things are just, it's just part of the aging process.
Right.
But like you kind of said it a minute ago, like the feeling completely out of sorts
Yeah.
and not being able to pull the pieces together and figure out what the solution is and then implement that solution
Yeah.
is demoralizing. It's highly frustrating.
Yeah.
You start to question
Question.
your sanity.
Yep.
You start to beat yourself up a little bit.
Yep.
You're already fighting with a changing body, which is really hard. I remember having a conversation one time with a friend of mine who has always struggled with her weight. It's just never been just somebody who's always had to just be very conscientious
Yeah.
of how she lives.
Hmm.
And when I started kind of packing on the pounds for me,
Hmm.
and not being able to shed them no matter what I tried.
That is
I
so
was like, wow,
frustrating.
I have so much empathy now
Yeah.
for any person, not even just women, people that have to constantly be super aware of
Hmm.
maintaining a particular weight so that they stay healthy
Yes.
and have it's like a constant struggle, a
Yes.
constant fight.
Which is another thing
Oh,
estrogen can help with.
yes,
So,
absolutely.
and I know that there are some supplements out there that claim that they can help with that. And, and hopefully they do,
Right.
especially for some women who do fine with that. But I just think that there are women out there that just need something else,
Yeah,
something else. And that's
absolutely.
why I think we both are on the same page with this, is that you got to explore and do what works for
For
you.
you. Mhm.
Um,
And don't
and
be
do the
afraid to
research.
like, I just keep thinking Carla. Like we had if you have not listened to the podcast where we interview our friend Carla, she's like our very first guest this year.
Mhm.
She's just like a badass when it comes to just not taking the first canned answer
Mm.
as the absolute, you know,
Well, that's what I
and
was going to say. Do your research.
yeah. Mhm.
Um, you know,
And use your voice.
yeah.
Demand. I should have demanded more, and I put some
Mhm.
of that on me. But I also feel like my doctor at the time, and I loved her. She's an amazing human, great doctor.
Mhm.
But I don't think I was ever really laid out the full picture.
Yeah. Well, I think that that's why you sometimes have to do your own
Yeah.
research,
Hmm.
and there's so much out there. And I know that there's misinformation out there as well.
Yeah.
But that's when you do your research, like she did,
Well, I
and
know.
bring it into your doctor
Yeah.
and
And
ask about
say, yeah.
these things and be like, I've read about this and I've read about this. Because I feel like the more you advocate and the more you raise your hand, the more questions you ask, the better that doctor is going to say. They might even say, you know what, she might actually be a better candidate for this,
Right.
because I'm sure they get inundated, doctors, by different patients and their
Sure.
workloads, maybe they're just following a process of
Right.
elimination.
Right.
But when you're raising your hand and asking more questions, it might lead to, just like
Yeah.
you said, something
Hmm.
that's a better turnout.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
one of the things that Dr. Haver uh, discussed on the podcast that I posted about was how a lot of women get misdiagnosed for depression.
Hmm.
And so that, they'll get put on, a Wellbutrin or,
Hmm.
SSRI, another type of medication. And it might be helping a little bit in the short term, but it's not really,
Yeah.
it's like a
Yeah.
band-aid
It's a
on the
band-aid. It's a
problem.
band-aid.
And
Hmm.
so that was such an eye-opener for
Yeah.
me, because
Hmm.
I've been on Wellbutrin before because I've felt off or
Yeah.
whatever. And I'm wondering, well, maybe if I just had some estrogen,
Right.
maybe I wouldn't need that.
Right.
Who knows?
Who knows?
I'm very hopeful and very excited to try it. I
Mhm.
don't know. I just want to feel good
You
again.
want to feel
You
that's
know?
it. That's I think at the end of the day, we all want to feel like we want to feel healthy.
Yeah.
We want to feel lively. We want to feel at our very best. we should feel at our very best.
Yes.
And there's really nothing worse than when you either are not given all the options, are not diagnosed, are misdiagnosed,
Mhm.
are, sort of just, again, um, feel like you're on a conveyor belt of patients where it's just sort of the same prescription over and over and over. We're going to give you a pill. We're going to give you everybody gets a pill, right? Like, um, I guess don't settle is kind of just, the essence of it all.
Yeah,
And
don't settle, advocate, do your research, and yeah, and definitely listen to that podcast if you
mhm,
guys, go to our Instagram or Facebook pages. I posted it on both,
yeah, great.
and check it out.
Yeah, and then you can also read. So this conversation is because I wrote a blog about
Yeah.
ablation versus hysterectomy.
Mhm.
So if you want more of the details, and feel free to post questions in the comments
Yeah.
or drop us a line. I'm a very open person, as I know you are. I'll talk. I will certainly share all of the information that I have. It's just to say that the entire process was completely eye opening to me. And I feel like in my situation, we took a detour when we didn't necessarily need to take a detour. And that detour, just again, it just sort of wreaked greater havoc
Mhm.
on me.
Yeah.
And, I didn't get the relief and I think the proper process medically for 4.5 years.
Well, I was going to say it was a short-term fix,
It was a short. It was yeah, it's
right?
another band aid. And then
Yeah,
to me, for me, the ablation was a band aid.
yeah,
And it's not like I was considering having more children. It's not like I was done. Like so, I feel like I don't know. Probably should have just bit the bullet. But to each your own. We're just sharing the information. It's again, I'm sharing a personal journey, a personal experience.
well,
You're getting ready. Penny's embarking on her own journey
yeah,
of hormonal health,
yes,
figuring out what's going to work for her.
yes,
And I love that you're doing the diary.
yes,
Because I think that will help a lot of people. I
yes.
really do.
Yeah, it's amazing to me how many women now that I speak to about this, like, have started their journeys even earlier than mine.
Hmm.
And I'm like, well, shit, well, what? Why wasn't
Yeah,
anybody talking about it then?
I
You know
know.
what I mean? Like, I wish I would have known more. And
Hmm.
so I feel like women need to, discuss it more.
We do.
Obviously, maybe, behind closed doors, away from the, um, I just, because it's a sensitive topic
Sure. But
for a
it
lot of
shouldn't be
women.
because why should you suffer in silence?
Well,
Which
I
is
think
part of the reason why we're sharing. Why I
yes,
think I
because
think
I think people feel shamed.
they
They
do.
feel ashamed. They feel embarrassed.
Yeah.
They feel like
Again, like they're losing
TMI.
their
Maybe
mind.
it's
Hmm.
they're losing their mind, and it's just not something you want to discuss all the time, right? But I
But you
think
need
it's
to know that there's people there to support you too.
yeah, and
Like
just share each other's experiences
yeah,
because that's how you learn and that's how
exactly.
you try new things. So
And even you can ask questions amongst your
sure.
community, your group of girlfriends, your acquaintances, and it doesn't have to even be specific to menopause. It can be anything. Like I think about I have this group text with a bunch of my girlfriends that I know from we all met having worked in the wedding industry.
Mhm.
And so there's six of us or eight of us. I can't remember the number. Anyway, the other day, one of them texted and was like, girls, I'm losing my mind. I can't sleep. I've tried everything. What do you all use for sleep? And so
Mm.
I take a CBD gummy. It's by Koi,
Maybe I need to
KOI.
try that.
And we all chimed in, somebody else was like, I take this, da, da, da. So she was like, all right. And I think she was like, oh, I've already tried that. That didn't work. So she was like, okay, Maya, where do you get these gummies? And it's the Koi's website. So I
Mm.
sent her the link and she texted me like, I don't know, 5 or 6 days later. She definitely had a week to try them. And she was like, thank you so much. This is the first time in years I got 8 hours of sleep
That's
in a
awesome.
night. And I was like, woohoo. So like sometimes it's not like you have to keep going back to the doctor,
Yeah.
especially if the doctor isn't helping you and isn't telling you, you feel like you're not being heard, which might be the sign to find another doctor if you can. With us we're TRICARE because my husband was military. So it's a little bit of a we don't have as much ease, right? In that, but just ask people you love, ask your inner circle, ask people who have gone through some sort of the same symptoms that you're going through.
Mm,
I always talk about like peeling back the onion, but
yes.
it's take control and just keep peeling back the layers until you
Yes.
get to where you deserve.
Yes.
That's the it deserve. We all deserve to live our absolute best. If
Yeah.
we can.
And here's another thing I'll say is that I think the reason that women don't always have these conversations is because when we get together, we just want to have fun and,
Yes.
and focus on all the,
Yeah.
or we're talking about work, we're talking about family, we're not talking about ourselves.
Right.
We're not talking about exactly what we're going through.
Right.
Always, especially if you're like in a party situation, or a get together situation. It's not the,
Hey, let's talk about our let's over
talk
a
about
coffee.
hormones.
Who wants to talk about hormones right now?
But no, but I think that's why maybe our society hasn't really talked about it that much. But I feel like that is changing.
It is changing.
That more
There's
people
still
are
a lot more
talking
that
about
needs to be
it,
done.
and I think that that's a great thing.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
anyway,
So
well,
that's it for today,
yeah,
y'all.
thank you for listening.
Thanks for
and
listening. We'll be back next week with
Yes, we will.
another exciting episode of Worth the Listen. But
Yes.
until then, stay cool. Stay
cool.
Stay cool.
I
don't know
we are
hot
all
flash.
doing that pretty well these days. It's been so cold, but yeah, stay healthy.
And
be
by that
well.
I mean take care of yourself.
Yes, thank you.
All right, peace out. We're out.
Bye.
Bye.